Here we go. All right, so like I said before, I'm gonna record all of my lectures. They're probably gonna be pretty bad quality, but I've got my fancy new, semi-new microphone up here. I'm real official now, right? But I am gonna post those so that if you want to rewatch the lecture, right, you can do that. I feel like it's pretty helpful. But okay. So this is what our Autocad interface looks like. This is the welcome screen, okay? And we have a few things here. We have kind of our file get started area. We have our recent documents. We have some notifications from Autodesk, okay? If you come over here, you can click on Learn. And over here, there are some, you know, what's new videos, tutorial type video type things, new features. So I don't use this screen a whole lot, right? But if you ever wanted to, when you update your software, figure out what's new from, you know, the two versions, then here's where you want to go. All right. So let's just look right here, get started. This is where you're going to start a blank AutoCAD file, essentially, right? So if you don't have any other file to start with, this is where all of the, this area right here where I'm hovering, you see how it highlights when I kind of hover over it, okay? This is where you can start a blank AutoCAD template file, all right? And that's just a straight out of the box feature of AutoCAD. Hey, we know that you may not start with a drawing from someone else, so we provide you blank drawings, okay? So to start a blank drawing, I can click on this space that says Start Drawing, click, okay? And when I do that, a brand new blank AutoCAD drawing shows up. Up here at the top, you're going to notice that when you will start to notice that when you open a new drawing, new tabs open up, okay? So this is, you know, I think something that's starting to happen across a lot of different softwares, right? Does anybody use InDesign or Photoshop or like the new stuff, right? They've started doing this where you can have tabs, right? So we have these tabs that show your new drawing, okay? If I want to close it out, I just hover over this little X, click, and it goes away. There's a little drop down menu right here, a little flyout menu, right, on my welcome screen, and if I click on the down arrow, there are also several more template files here that I can use to start a drawing, okay? When I click on this button, by default, AutoCAD starts this file right here, this acad.dwt file, all right? I wouldn't worry too much about any of these other ones just yet. You know, if you are starting a brand new blank drawing, then this is likely the one you want to start with anyway, okay? Over the course of the semester, you all will develop your own template files, so that will likely be what you'll start your project with in the future. So this is how we start blank files. This is how we can open files. You know, these are things we're not going to worry about now, but I think you can assume that, you know, we're opening different objects with these. We have a recent documents area where it will show you a little thumbnail preview of documents that you've recently been working in, right? So this is pretty helpful when you're working in the same drawing day after day for several weeks, and you don't have to click open and browse to wherever your file location is, okay? If I just simply click on this icon, click, right, it opens up that drawing. Okay, so this is just essentially a shortcut path to whatever drawing you've just been in. All right, so pretty helpful. This is kind of a new I say semi-new now, but it's probably been out for like 5 years, right? Anything above and beyond the old classic AutoCAD is new to me, right? That happened like the changeover was like 8 years ago. All right. So we'll open up a brand new drawing here, and we'll just take a look at the rest of the AutoCAD interface. I'm just going to click and start a brand new drawing. All right, and when it opens up, we have this black background that is shown immediately, and this area is our drawing board. All right, and this drawing board is called model space. Right, we do all of our drawing in model space as a general rule. Okay, before we get into that, again, we have the tabs. I want you to notice here. I can click on a tab and I can go to it. Click on a tab and go to it, okay? If I want to, I'm a keyboard person. I like to be able to type my commands, okay? We'll get into some of the ways to enter commands in AutoCAD, but I also like to navigate a lot with my hands, okay? So instead of taking my mouse all the way up to the top of my screen, right, away from my drawing here, I like to be able to switch back and forth and enter commands with my keyboard. So to navigate between tabs, you can hold the control key and just press tab. Click, 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 right? I'm tabbing. Just you tab, let go, tab, let go. So hold control, tab, tab, tab. Okay. When you get 3 or 4 drawings open and you want to reference one or the other, right, it's pretty helpful to be able to shortcut back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my drawing. We know how to close out a blank drawing, right? But another thing you'll want to notice is I have a little plus sign here, right? This little plus sign will allow me to click and create another brand new drawing. So AutoCAD, and I think this is something you will universally find, there's about 4 or 5 different ways to do everything in AutoCAD, okay? And there's not a right or wrong way. There's just a lot of different ways, okay? When I click this little plus sign, essentially it's the same thing as being on the start menu and clicking here, okay? Or coming down to this menu and clicking on acad.dwt, all right? Same exact thing. I'm gonna close out my new tab there. All right, let me just make sure I am not forgetting anything here. All right, so let's talk about the graphic layout of AutoCAD now. All right, we look here and we have this black background, and that is our model space. We draw in model space, all right? Does anybody have any exposure to AutoCAD at all in here? A little bit? Some? Okay, good, good. Okay, a lot of experience or a little?
It's been like 4 years, but I took a class before.
Good, okay. So some of these things are sounding kind of familiar.
They'll come back, I think,
Yeah.
over time, you know.
Okay, good, good, good. All right, well, and things have changed probably in the past 4 years with the interface a little bit, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. So we draw in model space. One thing I want to, and I'll say this a lot, but one thing I want to emphasize in AutoCAD is that when you draw things, you draw them the size that they are, right? And that might sound like a weird statement, but if you think about it, has anybody ever hand drafted in here? First, a little bit? I was gonna say first class, nobody's ever hand drafted in. Maybe in high school a tiny bit, yeah? Okay, I'm just guessing, right? Well, when you hand draft, when you draw things, you don't draw them 100 feet by 100 feet, right? You have to scale them down because a building that is 100 feet by 100 feet won't fit on a 24 by 36 inch piece of paper, right? So you have to think, okay, well, maybe 1/4 of an inch is equal to a foot. So if I have 4 feet, that's an inch. And then if I have a 10-foot building, okay, then it starts getting complicated, right? If I have a 10-foot building, so I have to start writing things down to figure out how big that object is. And it's, you know, it's part of hand drafting, but it's kind of cumbersome, right? Well, AutoCAD has kind of taken that scaling step, and it's, you know, we do still have to scale things, but we draw things the size they are, and it makes it really easy, right? So, you know, you're working on a McDonald's remodel, right? Which I did when I first started my first architecture job. I did about 80 McDonald's remodels. But you go out, you take your tape measure, you measure the McDonald's, you come back, right? And you draw it exactly as you have measured it in AutoCAD, okay? So what's nice about model space here is that we have an infinitely sized drawing board. So if it's 4 miles by 4 miles, there's enough space in here for you to draw that thing, okay? But we do draw in real world scale. Things are drawn at the size they actually are, okay? All right, so this is model space, all right? Some things I want you to notice about our model space and interface is that we have what's called the ribbon up here, all right? We have the ribbon, we have this big A, which is called the application menu. We have our quick access toolbar up here. We have of course, our tabs, all right? We have our view cube over here on the top right. Down here at the bottom, we have a command line, okay? Down here, we have our object snap toolbar. And then over here on the left bottom, we have our layout tabs. So our paper space layout tabs, okay? Our application menu, we'll just kind of start here at the top. Our application menu, when you click on it, it opens up and it has a lot of system type operations associated with it, right? So things like open, save, import, export, print, and then down here we have options, okay? So all of the things that you see in a lot of different softwares, right? Open, close, save, print, okay. I'm gonna hit escape and get out of that. Another thing that you'll want to know about AutoCAD is escape is the get out of jail free card. Whenever you get stuck in anything, just hit escape, right? Okay, this is our quick access toolbar, and it just contains probably fairly commonly used commands in AutoCAD. So things like open and save and print and undo and redo. And then we have a little drop down right here that number one will allow us to customize it. You'll notice that new, open, save, save as, plot, undo, redo, all of these icons. I can add, layers, and layers pops up there. Okay, so I can customize this quick access to allow me to put operations I use all the time up there. Okay, if there's a check by it, then it's there. If there's not, then there's not. But more importantly, okay, here is where you can get your menu bar to show back up. All right, and you'll notice here we have our ribbon, but you don't have any other file menus like file and tools and insert and whatever, right? And you do actually use them. I don't know why AutoCAD by default turns them off, but if I click on this down arrow and I click on show menu bar, you see how file, edit, view, insert, all of those good things show back up. Okay. This is one of those things, and I may have said this, I feel like at the beginning of the semester I repeat myself a lot, so I may have said it, I may not have, but I think one of the biggest problems with technology, learning technology, is not that you don't know what to do, right? Most beginning students go home and they know how to draw a line or they know how to save their files, but they come in here and when their file menu is missing, if it visually looks different, that's where the disconnect I feel like is, right? So I want to make sure that when you go home or work on your laptop that, hey, this is where I can find my file menu when I go home and it's not there and I panic, right? Where's my file menu? It looks different. The software looks different, right? I know there's the line tool, but things look a little bit different, right? We want to make sure that things are looking the same on your laptop as they are here so that you can work efficiently. So we've got our file menu back, okay? Just a reminder again. Show or hide menu bar, and it's just a toggle, all right? Let me just do a little experiment here. If I, for some reason, couldn't find my menu bar and I couldn't remember how to get it back and it was missing and I needed it, one of the best resources for you to find help is, of course, online when you're by yourself, right? I'm sure you know that, but, I find it very easy just to go to Google and type in something like, how do I find my menu, or like you could even say file menu in AutoCAD, right? Hopefully this doesn't. To display the menu bar, right? I click on the first one. If you get something from Autodesk, it's usually pretty high quality. People, there's blogs on Autodesk that are very helpful, but it will say, about displaying, oh, that's classic. To display shortcut menu, to work with customizing. Well, this one didn't really help me very much. This always happens when I pick it off the cuff. Missing menu tabs. Okay, well, let's see what that says. This is an Autodesk forum. Let's see. Ribbon. Oh, ribbon closed, turning the ribbon back on. While trying to fix it, I lost my menu bar. The text looking menu bar disappeared, right? So you can type menu bar at the command line. That's their solution. It's just something else, right? We can type it in. Usually somebody will say, yeah, you can do that, but you could also go up and click on the down arrow, right? But this is a good solution as well. Hello. Okay, so I had to actually look at 2 different links to find this one, but I did find the answer. And, these are, honestly, whenever I have a problem, I always find my answers here because somebody else has generally always had the same problem, that you've had. So let's try that out. Menu, well, we'll talk about that in a second. Sorry, let me just talk about that in a second. All right, so we've gotten our menu bar back and things are looking better, right? Let's talk about some of our tools, okay? So we've got our file menus back here, right? And we've got file, we all know what file contains. There's edit and view and insert and format, right? A lot of these different file menus that you can open up, they contain all of the same tools that the ribbon does. They're just kind of in a different place, right? So if I go to draw and I come down to line and I use that to draw a line, it's going to be the exact same thing as if I come over here to the ribbon and I click on line, right? Which will be the exact same thing as if I come down here to the command line and I type line. Oops. Let me turn something off. Well, we'll turn that off in a second. But if I come down to the command line or at my cursor and I type line and hit enter, okay? So it's just another way of entering commands in AutoCAD, okay? So we have our menu bars. We know how to turn those back on. We have our shortcut menus. We have our application menu here, right? Right below that, we have our ribbon, okay? And this is something you're going to probably, again, consistently see through a lot of softwares, right? The Microsoft softwares use the ribbon. The Adobe are starting to use it. Revit uses, Revit uses a ribbon, right? And so you're seeing the ribbon in a lot of places. The ribbon is essentially, it's a collection of tools for you to use in AutoCAD to draw. A collection of tools and also modification commands for you to use in AutoCAD, right? So we have these tabs: home, click insert, click annotate, click parametric, right? Click, 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 click. So I can click all the way down here and I can access all of these different tools, right? You're likely going to stay on the first maybe 3 tabs for now. You won't probably get much past that. But we have the home, insert, and annotate tabs. And then on each of those tabs, we have a menu or a tool palette, right? And the tool palette contains collections of tools that you'll use for a certain task, right? So this happens to be the draw tool palette. And when we use the draw tool palette, we have lines and polylines, circles, arcs, squares, ellipses, right? Different types of geometry that we draw to create drawings in AutoCAD, all right? Under the Modify tool palette, we have Move and Copy and Rotate and Mirror and Stretch. So once we draw objects using our draw tools, we can modify them using the modification commands, okay? We have text and dimensions and linear dimensions and leaders under our Annotation tab here, okay? In architecture, annotation gives description to basic geometry, right? So we have a wall drawn and annotation will tell you what type of wall that is. It will, describe it for you, okay? So we have draw, we have modify, and we have annotate. Essentially, those are going to be your most common tools you'll be using, okay? So to use these ribbon options, they're icons. So we click on them, click, okay? And I can come over here to model space, and if you just kind of want to mess around, you can click, 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 escape, right? And we're drawing lines on the screen, okay? You can come up here to circle, click, come down to model space, click, just mess around, click again, come up here, click, click, click again, right? If you get stuck, hit escape, okay? All right. Oh, there's Jameson. I'll go after him in a minute. All right. So we know where our, and there he goes again. We know where our menus are, our quick access, our file menus. We now have a good sense of where the ribbon is, right? You may not know how to use a lot in the ribbon, but we do know where it is. You can click, 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 and you can access all of the different tabs. Click, right? We can click on these icons and click in model space and draw. Escape, escape, escape. Escape's our get out of free card right there, right? All right, so we draw in model space, of course. We can access commands by our file menus through the ribbon, but we can also access commands 2 other ways, right? And both of them are in the form of a command line, essentially, right? So I can come down here to the command line, I can click in it, all right, and I could type L-I-N-E. Now, what happened here, this is a feature of AutoCAD that maybe came up like 6-7 years ago. We have the command line that is located at the bottom of our screen. I'm going to click again there and type L-I-N-E. Oh, it still went to my dynamic input, all right. We also have a setting now that is called dynamic input. So as I clicked on the command line, instead of, because I have my dynamic input set, L-I-N-E, appears at my cursor, okay? Either way is fine. You're still going to get the line command initiated, right? But one is going to be at your cursor and the other will be at the command line, all right? So I'm going to show you how to turn dynamic input on or off. It's kind of a personal preference. People that have been using AutoCAD for a really long time hate dynamic input. They never have it on. Like me, I don't like dynamic input. But you might like it, and that's fine too. whatever works for you, right? I'm going to turn it off real quick. The way that we're going to turn it off, I can show you how, and we'll go back and talk about this tool palette in a minute. I'm going to click on these three little lines down here, and I'm going to come up here to dynamic input, click on it. So when I clicked on it, it essentially turned it on, but it turned it on down here on my toolbar. So it's right there, dynamic input, the little ruler with the plus next to it. If I click on that, it turns it off. Okay, so that's how I'm going to turn my dynamic input off, just to show you command line entry. Okay, so with dynamic input off, if I type LINE and I hit enter, it initiates the command at the command line. Okay, and then I can specify the first point or click in model space to initiate that command. Okay. Okay, to get out of my command, of course, I'm going to hit escape, and it gets me out of that command. Okay, so we have our tool menu, our file menus that we can use to access commands. We have our ribbon. Okay, if you're a button person, my husband's a button guy. He likes to have every toolbar on, every single one on, mostly filling up a second screen, but he finds every icon and clicks on it, you know. But I'm more of a keyboard person, right? So I go to the keyboard and I like to use my hands and LINE, enter, and then start drafting, right? Because I don't like looking for icons. But personal preference, right? There's no right or wrong way. Okay, is that Jameson? Sorry guys, I keep thinking he's gonna text me. No, it's not him. All right, so let's talk about let me just stop. Any questions so far? About anything? Like I said, I'm just going to talk a lot the first couple days we have class, introduce these items. We'll go back over them as we're working through our assignments and other topics, right? You won't have any assignment tonight, just to kind of maybe absorb what we discussed today, essentially. All right. Let's talk about our object snap toolbar down here now. And let me just make sure I didn't forget anything. I think we are right on task here. So I'm going to skip back actually to the ribbon a little bit. There is one thing I forgot to show you. I think I showed you but didn't define it. One thing I do want to point out is that we do have these tool palettes that contain tools, right? But if there is next to the name of the tool palette a little down arrow, right, that means there's more tools available that we just can't see. Okay, so if I click on that, a lot more tools become available. Okay, so modify is the same way, annotations the same way. Most of these have some extra tools popping up here, right? Okay, any questions about any of that so far? Not yet. All right. Well, let's define what this little guy down here does, right? This is our object snap tool palette down here. Most of these are toggle icons, right? So it's the setting that you turn on or you turn off, right? There's not necessarily any input associated with it, okay? So one thing you'll notice here, this is blue, this is grayed, right? Anything that is grayed out is turned off, and anything that is blue is active and turned on, right? To activate and to turn things off, you just click on them. Click. See my grid turned off on the back of my model space? Click, click, okay. The grid is personal preference. I feel like it clutters my screen. I don't like looking at it, right? So I turn my grid off so that I have a nice clean drawing space to draw with, okay? I guess it can kind of visually help you to associate sizing with things, but I say that and I never do that, so I don't feel like probably anybody else will, right? So I kind of turn it off, okay? And it's a grid that gives you reference. It's not necessarily that you snap to it to help you draw, right? I can't access it to help me draw, so I'm likely gonna turn it off, okay? One thing that I also want to point out with these icons down here, on my Object Snap toolbar down here, is that I can click on these, right? But I can also quick key them with my keyboard. So if I hover over this grid, for example, F7, right? So most of these commands down here have a quick key associated with them. We have ortho, which you'll be using a ton. That's F8, 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 right? So maybe you guys are all rethinking the laptops you just purchased that don't have function keys at the top, right? You start to get very picky with your laptops, you know. I'm like, I need the function keys clearly visible. I need a keypad on the side. Can't be too big. The screen has to be very large, right? Because you start, you know, wanting to have all these options available to you very easily as you're drafting. But we have ortho here, right? We have polar tracking. We have a bunch of different things down here that you'll become very familiar with, all right? And again, to turn them on or off, I click on them, okay? Or I use the quick key, which I can determine by hovering over it, and I see F7, okay? Ortho is F8. So I can F8, see, and it turns blue, gray, okay? This model space tab right here, if I click on this, I'm gonna flip to a different view. Right now we're in model space. This is kind of a quick access key to what we call paper space. So if I click on this, click, it takes me to paper space, all right? Model space is where we draw. Paper space is where we print, okay? If I click on this icon again, click, it engages model space through my paper space. So I can see my drawing, right, that I've drawn in model space through what we call a viewport here, but I'm in paper space. I'm going to click on it again and it takes me back out of that, okay? Now you're thinking, well, I've gotten myself here, how do I get back to model space, which is where we draw, right? It's fairly easy. We're gonna use our tabs down here, our layout tabs, okay? So if I click on model space, click, I go back to the model space tab. If I click on layout 1, click, I'm back in paper space, right? So I can access paper space down here through the layout tabs, or I can come over here to this quick access right here, click, and well, that one actually, I was in paper space, but you guys get the idea, right? If I'm over here in model space and I want to go to paper space, I can click and it brings me there. Not that I really understand why clicking here is so much easier than just like coming over here, right? But again, AutoCAD allows you freedom to do whatever you'd like. All right, we're not going to really customize these today. This is something we'll probably do in the next few days, right? Maybe next week. But you also, when I turn my dynamic input on and off, right? You saw me click on these three little lines right here, essentially. These are all of the different options that you can have available down here. Okay, so if it were me, I'll just turn on and off the ones that I think I would use. If you guys want to do the same, that's fine. Let's see. Up. Okay. Right, so I'll probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'll have 10 of those available to me. All of the other ones are not going to be super useful to you right now. Okay. But these essentially, you know, I call this our Object Snap toolbar. These are going to help you draw. You know, they're essentially grouped in with items that are drawing aids, right? So they help you draw lines that are straight, completely straight, 90 degrees orthogonal, right? They help you draw lines that are at a specific angle, you know, 45, 30, 15 degrees. They help you find certain points on lines and geometry, the midpoint, the end point, the geometric center, right? The nearest point, a perpendicular point. So most of these down here will help you in drawing. They're drawing aids, okay? And we'll get into that in the future. Any questions so far? Anything? Okay, let me just, all right, so we talked, I'm going to come back over down here to my model space tab, click. Now, I'm just going to take a quick little break and say, you know, we've learned kind of where a lot of different things are in AutoCAD, but you're probably wondering, how am I moving around so well in AutoCAD, right? How do I navigate about model space, all right? Well, I'm using my mouse. And again, if you don't have a mouse that is conducive to AutoCAD, it's going to be really difficult. I have only found one person that kind of semi was able to draft with just a mouse touchpad on their laptop, which I was like, nope, can't help you till you get a mouse. But your mouse is going to be key in helping you navigate about AutoCAD, okay? You'll notice that you have a middle roller on your mouse, which most of yours will come with at this point. But if I take my middle roller and I roll it forward, kind of away from me, I'll zoom in. If I move it towards me, I zoom out. Okay. If I want to move back and forth, if I click down on the middle roller and I hold it down and I move back and forth, I'm panning. Okay, so hold it down and pan back and forth. So I zoom in, pan. I zoom in, I pan, right? I zoom out, I pan a little bit more, okay? So very, very key in being able to draft quickly and precisely is being able to navigate about AutoCAD pretty well, right? So we want to be able, don't be afraid. And I feel like afraid is the right word, because students are kind of trying to draw lines and their geometry is this far away and they're squinting, and I'm like, just zoom in, it's okay, it won't go away. But don't be afraid to zoom in, right? Zoom in, zoom back out, and pan about. Okay. We have some zooming tools kind of in our view toolbar here, right? So we can zoom here. I don't go into these a whole lot, and today for sure not, but I just don't think that they're useful, but very rarely when I'm trying to zoom into a geometry that I've drawn, very rarely do I want to come up here and go to view and then zoom and then window and then click and find, it's just so much easier to use your mouse to dynamically go zoom, pan, zoom. It's a lot easier, right? So I don't teach the zoom commands in depth because I just don't think it's useful, right? Nobody ever uses them. One other dynamic tool that we're going to have with our mouse is called a zoom extents, right? And so we can pan, we can zoom in, zoom out, and zoom extents with our mouse. And really those are all of the things that you need to navigate about AutoCAD, okay? So zoom extents, if I'm zoomed really far out and I can't see my drawing at all, zoom extents will take my model space desktop and it will zoom it out to the extent of the drawing board, right? So as much drawing as I have done, it will show on the screen if I use the zoom extents. Okay. Zoom extents is accessed on your mouse by double clicking your middle roller twice very quickly, right? So click, middle button, down, click, really fast. Isn't that nice? There you go. Okay. So click, very fast, and we zoom extents. And everything that is on your drawing board, comes into view essentially. All right, so it makes sense, hopefully, everybody, that we have our file menus, right, which can access commands. We have our ribbon that can access commands. And then, of course, down here at our command line, we can access commands, right? A couple of you were late, but so I want to bring this up again. When I first started using AutoCAD in here, and I was typing like I was typing at the command line, it typed at my cursor, right? I want to remind you who, will probably go home and look at this. If when I type something in and it appears at my cursor, that's my dynamic input, okay? So dynamic input is sort of a shortened command line input. Dynamic input also, when I draw things, click, you see that a lot of information about these objects show up on the screen, okay? Just, again, it's not my preference, so I turn it off. And to turn it off, I come down here, I find dynamic input. If it's not on your toolbar yet, you can access it through this little customization here. Click, dynamic input, okay? But I'm going to hit escape to get out of my drawings. This is dynamic mode. Click and turn it off, right? So now if I were to go in and type line, it does L-I-N-E, it does appear at my command line down here at the bottom, right? I hit enter, click, click, and all of that information is not there. Escape, escape. Okay. So my screen is getting a little cluttered, right? I've got a lot of lines on here. I can select objects in AutoCAD, right? And again, I know I'm moving over these things fairly quickly. We will go back in depth on these things, but you know, if you just want to play around in AutoCAD, I understand that you want to be able to move about and draw a few lines and maybe delete those lines once there are too many on the screen, right? To do that, you want to use, we have a couple of different selection methods you can use in AutoCAD, right? If I move my mouse to the top and to the right of my drawing and I click once and I let go of the click and I move my mouse down over these objects, okay, this is called a selection window. A green selection window will select anything that it touches. So even if I only touch a tiny bit of this circle, because it's a green selection window, it selects it, right? So I move over it, you see it highlights, I click one more time, and it's selected, right? When an object is selected, you can modify it. You can move it, copy it, rotate it. You can also delete it. To delete, you just hit delete on the keyboard, okay? You can select multiple things at the same time. So I can click and I let go. I drag my mouse over these items. I click again, delete, and they go away, okay? I'm gonna hit undo and show you another method. There's the pick. I hover, over a piece of geometry. I click once and it's highlighted and I can modify it. Delete, okay? Hover again, click, delete, and there it is. I also have a blue selection window, right? A green selection window occurs when I start at the top right, click, let go, drag, click, okay, and I go to the bottom left, escape, escape. A blue selection window occurs when I start at the bottom left, click, and I move to the top right, okay? A blue selection window, you notice that even if when I touch this object, you notice it's not selected, right? A blue selection window allows you to select only objects that you have entirely selected in that window. So you notice nothing selected, nothing selected. Oh, all of a sudden, this line right here, once I get it entirely in that selection window, it selects, okay? So this is pretty useful when you have a lot of lines on your screen, but you just want to get one thing, pick one thing or two things, okay? So I can hover over here, click, and there we go, delete. A new feature of AutoCAD, and this actually is a pretty new feature, I think it started maybe last year, is the lasso. I think the lasso is very messy. I don't like it. But the lasso selection is if you hold down your mouse button, you hold it down, and you just keep holding and you move your mouse. It's kind of fun to play with, right? But I don't feel like, I just don't know. I just don't feel like it's that effective, right? maybe, I don't know. Maybe I just am not in tune with these newfangled selection methods, but I don't feel like it's that helpful, I guess, if anything. Okay, there's also a blue lasso where if you just hold your mouse button down, and this is even more ridiculous, right? Because then now you have to kind of get everything. It's just fun to play with, maybe. But I'm more of a fan of kind of the click, let go of your mouse button, drag items over, click again, and, you know, or you could use a pick to be selective, very selective about what you're doing, okay? All right, I'm gonna hit escape here. In your course manual, and my course manual is numbered a little bit different than yours is because mine's just an older version, but around page 1-23, somewhere, maybe 124 or 122. There is a list of command aliases in that book. Okay, so there's maybe like 25, 30 of them. Looks like this somewhat. You guys got it? Okay, this is just kind of a shortcut list for commands in AutoCAD, all right? And I think it's pretty helpful when you're just beginning and you don't really know any of the commands, right? Like I said, you know, you can initiate a command through the menus, through the ribbon, or through your command line, whether it's dynamic input or at the actual command line. And you can do that by typing in the command line, right? So I can type to initiate an arc. I can type arc, A-R-C, enter, right? And I click, and something happens, right? You don't know how to quite do it, but I'm sure if you clicked enough times, you can get it to work, right? But this alias shorthands also lets me know that I can type A, enter, and I also get arc, right? So there's shortcut commands for these shortcut keys for these commands essentially. But another thing that has kind of popped up in the past few years with AutoCAD is kind of the auto predict, right? A big problem in AutoCAD was you're thinking, oh, I know there's a command, and I know it starts with LT, but I don't remember the rest of it, right? So you have to go look it up or find it somehow. They have kind of a predictive text happening at this point, right? So this shorthand list is still helpful. You can read through it, see the commands that are available, but it's not as helpful as it used to be because we have the predictive text going on now, right? So I could type A, and AutoCAD says, well, what do you want to do? Arc, area, whatever that is, right? ACAD block dialog, probably looking at a block or something. Right, what essentially do you want to do? And you can come up here and click and choose arc, right? So it's a little bit easier to determine your commands now than it used to be. I must have just turned on the air in here. I feel like something just like flew down my throat. I'm afraid it's asbestos from the from the ceiling. Yeah, it was Methods. I used to work at Method Studio before I started teaching full-time here, and we did it at the Professional Development Center downstairs. It's amazing how much asbestos is everywhere. It's a little warning, right? All right. So we have our shortcut keys here. Let's talk about, I think we have a pretty good sense of what we see when we open AutoCAD here. Other than one other thing, the view cube here, okay? As it stands right now, you won't engage the view cube very much, and honestly, I really don't want you to engage it very much because it can get you into a little bit of trouble at this point, okay? The view cube is mainly for, you could use these north, east, southwest. Do you see how right? It allows you to navigate back and forth and view your AutoCAD drawing. I don't know if you know this, but AutoCAD can be a 3D program, right? When I learned to model in 3D, it was in AutoCAD, and it's great. It has its place in industry, right? It doesn't have any information connected with it, which is kind of bad, but it'll allow you to do kind of very generic models pretty quickly, okay? So the view cube is mainly for those type of things, right? But when you saw me, when I did what I just did, you'll notice that it kind of rotated my drawing, right? Which, can make it so your drawing is number one, not drawn right side up, which can be fixed, right? But you may just not want to engage that error. But the other thing that this view cube can do that is kind of problematic is it can cause you to become non-coplanar, okay? And what that means is that, when we are drawing in floor plan view, we're drawing as if we were, standing up looking at the floor, right? So we're looking at a flat view of our drawing and drawing lines. What this view cube can do is, what the view cube can do is it can make it so that it skews your view so that you can think you're drawing a line that looks like that when you're looking at it, right? But in actuality, you didn't realize that if you looked at it from the side here, that it actually looks like that, right? So it's called non-coplanar objects, okay? So it means they're not flat, essentially. And so what will start happening if you become non-coplanar is you'll start drawing things and you'll start measuring them, and they won't be the right size. They'll be like 4 feet 6 and 1/19th, or some weird, very weird dimension. And you'd think, well, I thought I had drawn that correctly. I don't really understand what happened, right? And some of these things just happen. And this is mainly because the view cube is a perspective view of objects. It's not a pure flat view. It's perspective view looking down, right? So just take my word for it right now. Don't use the view cube if you can help it. If you've used the view cube and you're thinking, oh, I hope I didn't mess anything up. How do I get back to where I was? Well, north is always up, so try and get back to north. Try to get back to top view, okay? And once all of that is settled, come over here to this where it says top, click, and go to top view. And that will take you to a purely flat view, okay? Okay, so a couple more things for today. Let's see. I want to talk about drawing file types in Autocad. And, oh, I had one other thing that we're not going to worry about. Oh, the units. Okay. I want to talk about two more things today, okay, before we're done. And the first thing is I want to talk about units in Autocad. All right. One thing that you'll want to recognize about AutoCAD as well is that it's just not used architecturally, right? We have civil engineers in here. A lot of times I've gotten mining engineers and other types of engineering people, right? Product manufacturers. If you want to 3D print, you can use AutoCAD to do that. So my point is that a lot of different people are using it, and not just people in America use it, right? People in Europe use it, which means metrics, okay? So AutoCAD is very flexible. It's very generic in its units, right? So, but with that comes, you have to set your units before you work, okay? So what that means is that I'm going to type units, U-N-I-T-S, and I'm going to hit enter. The way that we input information into the command line, whether it's dynamic, you can do the same thing whether it's dynamic command line or at the command line. You just start typing, U-N-I-T-S, and you hit enter, okay? So you initiate the command by typing, and you execute it by hitting enter. To end a command, you hit escape, right? So those are the sequence of events that happen. But this dialog box is called the Drawing Units dialog box, and this will tell you what type of length unit you're in, all right? This is a very important topic. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty important. And I say that because if I have my drawing unit set to decimal, AutoCAD will only recognize decimal units, okay? So that means that if I come in here and I start typing things in feet and inches, it won't recognize feet or inches, and I can't draw anything, okay? This is kind of the #1 error that beginning students run into when they're trying to draw. They say, hey, I'm trying to draw this line, and it won't draw. See? And it's because their units aren't set, okay? So remember this dialog box, units, U-N-I-T-S. And again, let's see if we can Google it and find, right? How do I set my units in AutoCAD? Right? Oh, there's another way too. So they gave you a different way. But to specify the drawing units in AutoCAD, you can do it through the application menu as well. Like, this is a different way, but just as valid. Go to the application menu, utilities, drawing setup, click the units tab, and you can change it here, right, to decimal. Okay, so if you ever forget, how to do it or what to do, then you can Google it, obviously. Or you can watch this video that I'm going to post. Okay, but what we want to do is we want to change this to architectural. Pretty easy. Our precision, we want to change that to 1/32. Now this is kind of tricky because this is something that when you're at home and you're on your laptop, right? If you do it one time, and I'm going to say this with a warning, but if you do it one time, it's set forever. This is a system setting, right? Until you change it or you open a file with a different setting, it won't change, okay? So you kind of tend to forget about it until you come back to school and somebody else has changed it back, or we're using a different file that flips it back for whatever reason. So I'll continually remind you of this, but in general practice, you will only have to do this one time, okay? So architectural, 1/32, decimal degrees, precision will take down to 3 decimal units. I'm going to hit OK. And now we are in architectural units. Okay, so now, and again, you don't have to worry about how to draw things just yet, but I'll show you a little instance. I can click online, click. I can initiate my beginning point by clicking in AutoCAD, like if you just want to play around. I can move in the direction I want to go, and I can type a distance, 4, and I'll do the foot mark at the command line. And it doesn't matter whether it's at the command line or your dynamic input, okay? So I type 4 in the foot mark, enter, and I have a line. Oh, see, it's wanting to move again. It's a chain command. It just wants to continue on. So I hit escape, I zoom out, and there is my 4-foot line that's not straight. Okay. Let me give you some I guess maybe syntax as far as how you're going to input lengths in AutoCAD. Okay. So by default, the default unit in AutoCAD is inches, right? So if I just go in there, I initiate my line command and I type 6. 6 is going to be recognized as 6 inches. I don't have to type the inch mark, okay? So the default unit is inches. And if I want to do something, for example, 6 inches, right, I would type 6 and then enter. Okay, and it would recognize that as 6 inches. Right, if I wanted to do something like 1 foot, okay, I would enter 1 and then the foot mark, and then enter. This will just be universal all the way down. Okay, if I want to do something like 1 foot 6 inches, right, I would type 1 with a foot mark and then 6. Right, so no space. Okay, if you hit the space bar in AutoCAD, it's like hitting the enter key. So you could type 1 space bar and you're thinking, well, why isn't it working, right? The space bar is another enter key in AutoCAD. If you wanted to do 1 foot 6.5 inches, right, you would do 1 foot dash 6 1/2. I did that wrong, sorry. I always mix these two up. 1 foot, sorry, 6 1/2. There we go. Okay. In Revit, it's a little bit different. So 1 foot 6.5 inches, and then of course you would hit enter. Okay. But this is something you'll get used to pretty quickly. You can type in feet or inches, it doesn't matter. I tend to think in inches for whatever reason. When I go out and I measure spaces, you know, you got your tape measure, you can do 16 foot 6 inches or measure it in inches. And so if I want to enter a command that's 10 feet long, right, it's just as valid to say 120 inches. And honestly, it's laziness, because then I have to take my hand off the key pad and find the little foot mark, right? You guys will start seeing it eventually, right? So, you know, either way is valid. 3 foot 6, right? 42 inches. So I am always kind of doing things in inches, okay? But this is the way you're going to input information into AutoCAD. And let me just take my units back to decimal. I'm going to type units, enter. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to take it back to decimal. Okay. And I'm going to come up and initiate my line command by clicking in model space, moving where I want to go. And if I typed 20 with the foot mark, because I put that foot mark in and I hit enter, nothing happened, right? And you're like, oh, this is the #1 mistake that happens when you're first starting. I'm just going to warn you, right? I type, oh, well, let's do it again. 20 foot, enter. Well, nothing happened. And it's not because AutoCAD isn't working, it's because you're inputting, you know, a format that in decimals it doesn't recognize, okay? So I type units, enter or spacebar. Spacebar is enter in AutoCAD. I come up here to architectural, decimal degrees, 1/32. I hit OK. All right, I come up here, I initiate my line command, I click, move in the direction I want to go, and I type, you know, 1 foot 6 or 12 foot 6, really 12 foot 6, enter, right? And so now that recognizes it, and I can zoom out. Okay, you notice that as I zoom out and I pan, it doesn't break my command, right? So these commands are all working together to help you draw precise drawings, you know, that have straight lines. it makes it easy to navigate, right? I can draw lines, I can move in the direction I want to go, I can type 5 foot, or I just typed 5 on accident and hit enter, and I have a 5-inch line, and it wants me to continue. Yep.
SketchUp is made by Autodesk, right?
I don't think so. I think it's Google.
This sounds kind of familiar with what they
Yeah, it's similar, for sure. It's similar. It's kind of, they call it the direct entry method, right? And Revit has it. Revit is an Autodesk product. SketchUp has a similar type function, but SketchUp's, I actually think, produced by Google, right?
Is it?
I think so, yeah. You all can get it free. You can download it for free.
I have it.
Yeah.
I thought it was Autodesk.
Yeah, maybe Autodesk produced it and sold it, but I think Google's always had it. Yeah. So I move in the direction I want to go, right? I type, let's do 3'6", enter, and we're just moving along. And again, don't be afraid if I think beginning students get afraid to, once they've got the command working, they don't want to move because they don't want it to stop, right? But zoom out, zoom in, pan back and forth, right? You can navigate at the same time you're drawing and it doesn't break your command, okay? All right. I can even zoom extents, right? I can go click, click, and it doesn't break my command. I'm very unafraid, right? All right. So we have talked about, I think we've gotten through most of the things I wanted to talk about, except for file type. Let me just make sure I got everything here. Of course, I'm signed out. Did you all have to enroll in the Duo authentication, right? I have to carry my phone with me so that I can log into Canvas. Okay, let's see. I think we are. I think we're there. Okay. All right, one more thing. I want to talk about file structure, right? Or file format. What are these files? What are the extensions? What do they look like? When I save them, how do I manage them? Right, that type of thing. By default, if you look up here at my, my title bar, I've got the name, drawing 2, and I have the .dwg file extension, okay? .dwg is a working drawing file, all right? So when I come up here to File and I click on Save, and I go and I save this, I'll save it on my desktop. So we'll create a new folder called Autocad project. I'm going to open that up. Okay. When I look here at my file name, it does have the extension .dwg. So that means that if I save this here with that name, with that extension, it's a working AutoCAD file. Okay. You'll also notice down here that it says this is an AutoCAD 2018 drawing file. Okay. So I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to minimize this, and we're going to look at AutoCAD project, and there is my drawing file. I'm going to change to, well, it's not showing my extension. How do I get the extension to show? Let's see. There we go. Okay, so .dwg. Okay, so I know it's a drawing working file, and it's important because AutoCAD, at the same time that you are working in your drawing file, meaning if I had come in here and I had closed this out, closed it, okay, and then I'd opened it back up, oh, of course, and I'd hit save. At the same time that I am working in this file, AutoCAD is consistently, as you hit Control S and at certain automatic backup intervals, it's generating a backup file for you. All right. So when, I'm kind of crazy about trying to stay organized with my files, maybe you guys are too, and I hate seeing these, frivolous files everywhere. There's 2 files for everything, but don't, even if you're tempted, don't delete that file because it's pretty important. If you happen to lose this working file, this will allow you to, to within probably a reasonable amount of time, be able to recover a lot of your lost work. Okay, so if I'm in this file, I hit Control S and I close it out. I've been working for a while, and I go back in here and I accidentally click on this and I hit delete. And I panic and I think, oh, where did that go? Or it gets lost, or it corrupts, or I can't find it, or any number of things that happen, right? I can click on this file with the BAK extension, click on it very slowly again, and rename it. I'm just backspacing those out. DWG, and hit enter. Would you like to change it? Yes. And it brings back that working file. Okay. This has happened to me before professionally. We've lost files, and people really forget those backup files, what they do, and how helpful they can be. Okay. So don't get rid of those. Make sure you keep them till the end of your project, and you're not actively working in it. So I open that up now, and now it's my working file. And when I hit save again, it generates another backup file, right? So it's immediately backing up again, okay? Okay, so I have my DWG file, I have my BAK file. If I come here and I click on File, Save As, using this little drop down here, you'll notice we have a few other extensions, and we also have some other versions of AutoCAD available. All right, not every, I think it's getting better now that people are on AutoCAD subscriptions, right, good or bad, but for a really long time not everybody was on the newest version of AutoCAD, right? And so the rule is, if I'm in AutoCAD 2016 and you're in AutoCAD 2018 and you send me a file, I can't open it. Okay. What all of these different kind of versions will allow you to do is what's called saving down. So AutoCAD will allow you to go back and forth within reason between a couple of different versions of its software. So normally when I'm saving, I will usually save down a couple versions like AutoCAD 2013, just so that if I'm working with an engineer that has an older software, or someone else, or they're able to immediately open my file without having to email me back and saying, we don't have AutoCAD 2018 yet, can you please save down, right? If you don't save down too far back, it's not going to. I think I've never run into a problem, right? If you save down to AutoCAD 2002, maybe so, right? You'll lose some functionality. And that's so funny because I ran into an engineer, and he was working in like AutoCAD Lite 99 or something. I was like, I don't even know if we're compatible at this point. I'm really sorry. So you will lose some functionality if you go back a decade, right? But if you go back just a couple years, which is pretty reasonable, you'll be just fine. Yeah. So I would suggest and this again is one of those things where if you do it one time, AutoCAD will normally just remember. So if you change it to, AutoCAD 2013 one time, then you should be good to go. Okay. So good practice, just change it to a lower version and hit save, and it will save it down. All right. Some other drawing file extensions you're going to notice here that are important. We have a DWT. Okay. DWT is a drawing template file. So this is going to be a file, we'll get into these a little bit more, but later on, but this is going to be kind of one of those files where when you go to work for an office, when you start a project, they have a template file for you set up, right? So it has all of their layer settings, all of their dimension styles, all of their text styles, everything about their company that is designed is put into this file. So you can open it up. There's no creating layers, creating dimensions, getting ready, adding a title block. It's all contained in there, right? So you have a fresh blank drawing ready to go. And you guys will get to make one of these, right? Through the course of the class. So we have template files, we have working files, we have backup files, and then probably the only other one you'll be really concerned with is the DXF, okay? A DXF is a drawing exchange format file. AutoCAD is a form of CAD software, CAD, right? Which is an acronym for Computer Aided Drafting Software, right? AutoCAD is a name brand CAD program. But CAD programs are things like SketchUp. SketchUp's a CAD program, right? There's probably a million out there. Revit is a BIM software, but it's still kind of technically a CAD program. But any type of computer-aided drafting program is a CAD program, okay? And most, and I say most, most CAD programs can exchange files, right? And this drawing exchange format is an effort to help exchange files between different softwares, right? So if you have the professional version of SketchUp, you can export your CAD file out to a DXF and it will accept that. And actually the Pro version will accept a DWG, but a DXF will usually be accepted in other programs, okay? It doesn't alter it. I don't know honestly what it does to it, but it will allow it to be accepted into a lot of other programs. Not everyone, but a lot of them, okay? Let's show you, just to show you kind of what it looks like. Okay, we'll go to Desktop, AutoCAD, and Exchange File, right? So there's our DXF, there is our DWG file, there's our BAK file, and I'm not going to save a template file because AutoCAD tends to remember them and open them a lot, so I'm not going to do that yet, but the template file would be a red icon with a DWT extension, okay? All right. AutoCAD files are pretty small, generally speaking. Even when you have a very, very large project, they're relatively small in size, right? This little drawing file we did was 45 kilobytes, right? Which, I mean, these days is nothing. They're usually pretty manageable. They're usually pretty easy to function in. Even when they get really large, you know, they're still fairly manageable. Okay. Any questions so far? There's a lot of talking. I'll be talking a lot on Thursday too. But then we'll get into the good stuff, right? How to draw, how to work. All right, well, no homework for tonight. I'm going to post another quiz at the end of the week. So you'll want to, you know, kind of log on and do that maybe towards the end of the week. But I think we've gotten through everything. Yeah. We've gotten through everything we need to get through. Okay, next time when we meet, we are going to be talking about an underlying organizational system in AutoCAD, so how it actually functions as a system. We'll talk about coordinate input, right? So we'll start drawing and learning how AutoCAD sort of organizes, using its organizational system, you can draw within the system. And we'll learn some object snaps, it looks like. So stay tuned. And then next week, of course, oh, this doesn't affect you, I guess, but Monday is Labor Day. Anyway. Okay, phew, right? There you go. That is all.